Welcome to the Planning Committee. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, first item on our agenda, any apologies for absence?
Just from Councillor Nicola Matthews.
Nicola, yeah. Thank you. And the second item then is any disclosures of personal or prejudicial interests? Anyone? No? Yes. Okay, so item 3 then is to approve and sign the minutes of the previous meeting as a correct record. And you will find that on pages 1 and 2. There's page 1 and page 2. Somebody move that as a true record. Thank you. And then item 4 is any items for withdrawal or deferral?
No, Jack.
None? Well, okay, thank you. And moving on to item 5 then is the determination of planning applications under the Town and Country Planning Act of 1990. And the first item on our agenda you see on page 6 is in Wynalloy then. Lucy, that's yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Right, this planning application is made to vary condition 1 of the previously approved reserve matters permission to allow for alterations to the development. The original development approved under outline and reserve matters permission was for the construction of 36 dwellings with associated access, parking, landscape and open spaces. The original outline consent included a Section 106 agreement for affordable housing on site at a rate of 15% and a highway contribution of £10,000 towards new signage and road markings. Since then, Pobble have confirmed that the site will be occupied as 100% affordable housing. The development had commenced in 2020 by the laying of foundations of a number of the dwellings. However, the construction company went into administration and is no longer operating. Therefore, construction work stopped on site. The permission that has previously been granted is still therefore valid. Slide 1 of the presentation shows the site location plan and a Google Earth image showing the foundations of some of the dwellings and the location of the roadway within the site. The site is located towards the southern end of Brithwin Road, close to the junction with Greenways. The changes proposed under this Section 73 application are, firstly, alterations to the highway layout, additional trees and street greening, addition of photovoltaic panels and air source heat pumps to the dwellings, increasing landscaping to the southern boundary, a reduction in hard surfacing to the rears of plots 1 to 4, and minor alterations to the position and footprints of the proposed dwellings and parking spaces. Slide 2 shows the approved scheme on the left and the proposed scheme on the right. The changes to the highway layout shows that the entire road surface is now to be a shared surface with a continuous segregated footway on the north side of the road. The approved scheme had an adoptable section for the first 15 metres with footways on either side for the adoptable section and no segregated footways further along the shared surface. Slide number 3 shows the additional trees within the street scene. The original scheme on the left-hand side included 16 trees within the street, and the proposed scheme on the right-hand side now includes 27 trees, which is an additional 11 trees. Slides 2 and 3 show the increased landscaping to the southern boundary, which also includes 6 additional trees to the entrance of the site, and the retention of trees adjacent to number 94 Brithwin Road, which is to the south of the site. This image also shows the reduced hard surfacing to the rear of flats on plots 1 to 4. Slide 4 shows the dwellings with the proposed photovoltaic panels on the front and rear roof slopes and the air source heat pumps to the rear of each dwelling. No objections from the public have been received. In terms of visual amenity, the proposed alterations are considered to be acceptable as they will define the street with active frontages, turn corners positively, and would have a good relationship to the retained trees. It is considered that the street design would result in a more informal, place-led, low-speed design, integrating green infrastructure with meandering curb lines, groups of street trees, enhanced tarmac with coloured chippings, and a defined footway area for vulnerable pedestrians. The proposed photovoltaic panels will be added to the front and rear elevations of the dwellings. The agent has provided an example of the manufacturer specification of the proposed panels and has shown them indicatively shown on the location on the front and rear roof slopes of each dwelling. However, the precise dimensions and specifications of the panels have not been provided. As such, it is considered necessary to add a condition requiring full details of the panels and their precise dimensions prior to the construction of the above-ground superstructure of the dwellings. The air source heat pumps would be located approximately 0.2 meters from the rear of each dwelling, and as such would not be visible from the public domain. They are modest in scale, measuring approximately 1 meter in width, 0.6 meters in height, and 0.5 meters in depth. As such, given the scale and location of the heat pumps, they are not considered to detract from the visual appearance of the proposed dwellings, and they're therefore considered to be acceptable additions to the development. In terms of highway safety, it is noted that the highway officer has raised some concerns regarding visibility space of the parking courts, the turning head, and some of the parking spaces, and has stated that the revised layout with the shared surface for the entire length of the road is not for adoptable standard. However, as the roadways will be maintained privately by Pobble and not adopted by the council, the alterations are considered to be acceptable. A condition will be added requiring details of the future maintenance and management of the streets. The proposed additional trees and landscaping is welcome, which will result in an enhancement to the green infrastructure within the site and will enable the additional connectivity of the woodland to the sink to the west of the site. The sink is the site of importance for nature conservation. Having regard to all material planning considerations, the proposed amendments detailed within the committee report are considered to be acceptable and would not have a harmful impact on visual amenity of the area, the residential amenity of existing and proposed occupiers, ecological impact, or impact upon parking and highway safety. As such, the proposed scheme is considered to provide a more place-led approach with active frontages, low-speed design, place-led streets, and integrated green infrastructure, and therefore the application is considered to comply with the provisions of the relevant LDP policies listed in the committee report. Approval is therefore recommended subject to the aforementioned conditions as detailed within the committee report and the update to condition 1 on the update sheet, which just revises the plans condition. Thank you.
Very much. And I've got Phil Baxter is wishing to address us. Mr. Baxter? Yep, when you're ready, please. You've got your 5 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, Committee, for the opportunity to speak today. I represent Pobble Group for this application. The application seeks amendments to a reserve matters consent that was previously granted in 2019 for 36 homes on the site. The permission has been implemented, however, as officers have advised, unfortunately the contractor that was appointed at the time fell into difficulty and is no longer operating. The site has therefore been left without construction activity for some time. The opportunity was taken by Pobble to make adjustments to the layout, in particular to the estate road design, in order to respond positively to the evolving placemaking agenda being sought by Welsh Government and the local authority. Furthermore, as the site is a 100% affordable housing proposal, the houses now incorporate photovoltaic panels on the roofs, as well as air source heat pumps in order to reduce energy demand and contribute towards Pobble's ambitions for delivering energy efficient homes for those in most need in Swansea. Pobble have worked very closely with your officers from numerous departments for an extended period of time to arrive at the scheme before you today, and Pobble would like to thank officers for their continued support shown. The applicant has undertaken a lengthy quality audit of the revised layout, which has informed the design and character of the streets, as well as the green infrastructure contained within the scheme. Pobble feel that the proposals represent an enhancement to the design of the scheme as previously approved, and subject to planning permission being granted, would like to appoint a new contractor swiftly in order to complete the development. I conclude and agree with your officers that the development is acceptable in all respects and meets the objectives of Future Wales and the adopted local development plan. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much. Councillor Black, then Councillor Downing.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can you tell me what exactly is a shared highway?
It's a highway which includes areas where people will walk and vehicles will be able to move throughout the estate, but at a very low speed. If you looked at the schedule, the presentation, you can show that it has a shared surface with like a tarmac or a sort of paving surface, and then has a separate pathway around the side, so it can be used for multi-purpose for pedestrians and vehicles.
So there's no pavement,
There's one pavement running along the northern side of the road, yes.
but not the southern side.
No,
So people may be walking on the road.
yes.
So is it going to be traffic calmed?
Well, there's a raised table at the entrance to the site, which will be a raised
Yeah.
platform at where from the adopted highway at Brithwin Road, where it comes into the estate.
Will the rest of the road be traffic calmed?
In what way? I mean,
Will there be cushions or speed humps or something to slow down vehicles just in case? I mean, if someone's going to be walking on the road and vehicle start to pick up speed.
yeah, there won't be any speed bumps as such, I don't imagine. Ian, have you got the plan on the
I mean, the slide wasn't very clear, to be honest.
right?
Can't even see it from here.
No,
Oh, to get up and have a look.
no,
That's
exactly.
it,
I
yeah.
mean, that just looked like a fuzzy
Yeah.
black.
Right, I see, yes. You see the grey line to the west, to the
It's the
east.
pavement,
Is
yeah.
the pavement then, yes. So the idea is it allows for very slow speeds, shared surfaces within the actual estate.
It allows for slow speed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be more comfortable if you actually had some physical restraints on the speed of the vehicles.
That was one of my questions about it, because
Yeah.
do now teach your children to walk in the middle of the road
Yeah.
because it's safe. My question was when the officer started off and said 100% affordable, do we get to know what the percentage is on social rented, and it's got intermediate rent, which I'm not sure of, and then low cost home ownership? So do we get a percentage of how much is social housing that's going to be rented?
Yes,
Because
it's a 70-30 split in favour, 30% intermediate and 70% social rented.
so what about low cost home ownership? There won't be any?
That comes through the intermediate element of the phase. So the intermediate is the low cost home ownership, and the social rented then is the rented section of it.
What percentage intermediate?
70%.
What percentage of the rent or price?
Well, the acceptable cost. I don't know how much the actual rents will be for the dwellings. That doesn't come in through us.
Sorry, intermediate housing can be anything between 60 and 85% of the market value. So I'm just wondering what percentage of the market value would be set for the intermediate housing.
It's usually 70% the acceptable cost guidance on intermediates. Yes.
Sorry, Councillor Kitten.
Hi, just a few questions and one comment about the needing anything, pavements or anything along there. It's been proved on the continent that when they don't have much pavements and people have to walk on the road, drivers very quickly learn to drive slowly and treat it like a drive. So here's hoping that's what happens. My main concern is what's enhanced tarmac? Does it mean that it drains?
I haven't got the precise details of that with me at the moment. Maybe Amanda from Highways. Yeah.
Anything else there, Councillor?
The other thing is the usual one, is what sort of suds have you got in place there?
It's pre-suds.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
application was determined back in when was the original consent was granted in 2017? Oh, the outline consent was granted then, so that was prior to the SUDS legislation be coming in.
Unfortunately, the rain still comes down regardless of that. But yes, if I could find out if the tarmac has some sort of drainage. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come back for that now then in a minute, in a moment. Councillor White?
Yes, coming back to the shared road there, then can you clarify, is there any legal requirement that for signage to be put on this roadway to indicate it's going to be shared use?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pobble would be administrating the maintenance and management of the streets, and we will have a condition requiring the details of how that will be achieved as part of the planning permission.
Okay, thanks.
Can I just come back, Chair, that's all you saying that we can actually put a condition on ensuring that does happen? Yeah, I appreciate that, but it doesn't say anything about signage.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tribe?
Thanks, Chair. Two-part question. I didn't notice if there were any green areas from the first slide, which if is the case, and I suppose it would encourage the children there to play on the road, which is a concern. And like notice there's a water course nearby. Would there be any flooding issues? Thank you.
Yeah, the flooding issues were previously looked at under the original outline consent. And there is a river, a small stream which runs to the west of the site, and there's a 7-metre buffer between the stream and the back of the houses, which is the part of the riparian corridor that needs to be maintained for ecology purposes as well. But all the drainage issues were considered at the outline stage.
Thank you. Green areas?
Yes, there is one small local area of play within the site, which will have sort of a naturalistic play features within it, which is at the top of the site, which is overlooked by about 4 or 5 of the dwellings.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, there was Amanda, there was an issue there over the surface. Would you have any info on that?
Yeah, there was a query regarding enhanced tarmac and what it was. As this scheme will not be coming up for adoption, that the format, the materials, necessarily signage, as Councillor White also commented on, that would all be covered under the maintenance management condition that Lucy's already referred to. So there's nothing for us to comment on currently, but it would be dealt with by condition. All of the queries that we just made regarding the signage, regarding the construction of the tarmac as well. There's been queries made about SEDS and that's the drainage is something completely separate, but in terms of the tarmac, the details of the tarmac would be submitted as part of the management maintenance condition.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, sorry, it's on page 11, I think. It's about active travel, because now we're talking about this shared use. Of course, we talk just about people walking and driving. So what about the cycling? Because what I can understand is it says that financial contributions towards the delivery off-site of specific measures, but I couldn't see any condition. So I just wondered what we're supposed to be doing. And I agree with Councillor White about the signage. It's really important, especially if you're going to put cyclists into the mix as well.
Yes, the Section 106 agreement, which was originally granted with the outline, included £10,000 towards new signage and road markings within the area. So that was what was agreed at the outline stage, and that's the situation as it stands now, and that's already been agreed.
It would have been useful if we could have had it incorporated somehow into this report, because it was quite a long time ago that the other one came forward. So, you know, I mean, I've been on the planning committee forever, but not everybody has, and even I didn't remember it. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Keaton, you want to come back?
Yes, sorry. So for clarification, so this enhanced tarmac isn't actually for drainage. It's just for the look.
There's no details being submitted, so I can't comment on what enhanced tarmac is, because it's not something that I've come across before.
I'll Google it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Black.
Can't hear anything.
I'll start again. Yeah, microphone. Yeah. Can I move an amendment to condition 3 that the scheme for arrangements for future management and maintenance of the proposed street should include some traffic calming? Thank you.
Got no other speakers? Oh, sorry. All right, yeah, thank you very much. We'll do that. Yeah, okay. Okay, got no other speakers then, yes? So we can take a vote then, Gareth. But as it says, the proposal before us is to vary condition 1 of the existing planning permission. But yes, with that amendment. We'll put that with the amendment first then, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, do you want to vote on the amendment
Yeah,
first? Yeah, so with Councillor Black's amendment for additional traffic calming measures. Do you want to take a show of hands or do you want me to do it?
do you want to show of hands?
Yeah, happy to accept
Any
that, John.
against? Anyone
Okay.
against? No other no one else, no? Abstentions, okay, so, right. Yeah,
Recommendation with the amendment and Chair,
Yes,
so
please.
councillors Peter Black,
For.
Phil Downing. For. Alan Jeffrey,
For.
Mary Jones,
For,
Sarah Keaton,
For, but sad about the drainage.
Mike Lewis,
For.
Richard Lewis,
For.
Mark Tribe,
For.
Mike White,
For.
Andrew Williams,
For.
and Paul Lloyd. That's unanimous, Chair, 11 for.
very much that's carried. And then we move on to item 2 then, is into Morriston Ward at Community Quarry. Thank you. Irene.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. Okay, this application reported to Planning Committee because it's a reserved matter submission relating to an outline application that was accompanied with an environmental statement and a number of units proposed meets the committee threshold. The proposal mainly relates to residential development on a former quarry in Cymru de Caerw, and various applications relating to the development has been before Planning Committee over the last few months and a couple of years. This is the location of the site in the context of the broader Swansea area and is shown by the red circle. The site is in the northern part of the city in a suburban area, generally residential in character. Next slide, please. This is the counterpart aerial image of the site. As a point of reference, the greenery around the immediate periphery of the site is Morriston Golf Course. Next slide, please. So this is the location plan showing the whole of the development site outlined in red. This shows the former quarry and the pattern of urban development surrounding the site. The golf course that I mentioned earlier is to the south. Next slide, please. So extensive planning history with this, and it's documented in the report. Originated by an outline permission allowed on appeal in 2018. The site has been subject to approval of various reserve matters, and phases of the site has already been subject to construction, and it's effectively split into 6 different phases. So on the screen now, you can see all those different phases, and phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 have already been approved and largely under construction. Phase 6 relates to the quarry basin and the area of open space, and that has also been approved. So this application relates to phase 5, which is the final phase seeking agreement of details for 19 units with the open space and in infrastructure. So this is the smallest phase of the overall development and is located at the southern end of the former quarry basin. The applicants indicated that it would be 100% affordable. It should be noted that the affordable housing provision of this scheme has already been catered by other phases, so it's not a formal requirement of this application. Next slide, please. So this is the proposed site layout plan, which reflects the broad principles set out in the master plan submitted with the outline and indicates the provision of frontage development facing the quarry basin. The scheme proposes 19 units comprising of 1 to 2 bedroom flats and 2 to 3 bedroom houses. All units will be 2-storey with pitch roof, single street alignment, and follows a natural curvature of the quarry basin. There are 2 blocks of flats and the remainder are dwellings. 2 of the 4 house types have already been used in previous phases, and access is by an extension of an internal road from phase 3. Next slide, please. So here are the elevations and floor plans of the 2 block of flats. 2-storey, as I mentioned, pitch roof units with gable features and some contrasting materials. Next slide, please. Here are elevations and floor plans of some of the dwellings that's proposed. Both the flats and dwellings share common themes in terms of their scale, design, appearance, and character. Next slide, please. So here's an illustrated example of how the units would appear in the street scene, emphasizing that the principal elevation would face towards the center of the former quarry basin and the area of open space. Next slide, please. So turning to the photographs, I previously mentioned this is a large residential site involving several phases situated in a former quarry. Most phases are either complete or in the middle of construction. Phase 5 is situated near the southern end of the former quarry basin, and this photograph is taken from an elevated position in the vicinity of Phase 4, looking down into the quarry basin. Phase 5 is generally in the area on the right-hand side of the photograph and currently appears to be a bit of a site compound. Next slide, please. Here's a photograph taken from the elevated position in the vicinity of Phase 2, again looking down into the quarry basin. Phase 5 is located at the far end of the photograph in the distance. Next slide, please. So this photograph is taken from a slightly elevated position on the outskirts of Phase 3. The land in Phase 3 gradually slopes down until it starts meeting some of the levels in the basin. Phase 5 is located in the area approximately behind that blue container on the photograph. Next slide, please. So this is taken from the basin itself in the general vicinity of Phase 5, looking back up towards the houses that's on the periphery on the top of the on the former quarry. Next slide, please. So this is a collection of some of the residential units completed in other phases of the site, just to provide you some context on, what's the general type of development that's happening in this development. Next slide, please. So the principle of the development has already been established by the outline permission that's been granted on appeal. This application only covers the acceptability or otherwise the details for the Phase 5. It's not for this application to revisit the principle of the development, including things like contributions, because those have already been agreed by the outline. So the main issues relate to the impact of the development upon the character and appearance of the area, impact on residential amenity, highways, ecology, drainage, and land contamination. So the report has considered all these aspects in context of policies and guidelines, and as well as any comments that we've received. So in terms of visual amenity, the residential development is compatible with earlier phases, being appropriate in topography and general design, appearance, and character, and reflects the principles agreed at the outline and the master plan stage. So overall, the recommendation for the visual amenity seems to be acceptable, so raising no significant issues. In terms of residential amenity, this phase does sit rather separate to the earlier phases and doesn't have a direct impact on other properties, and the level of amenity for future residents are considered acceptable. In terms of highway safety, the proposed development would be accessed by an internal road from Phase 3. Highway Authority have raised no objections to the layout, and amendments in relation to the refuse strategy and bin collection points are being dealt by conditions. The access, some concerns were expressed regarding the proposed cycle stores blocking an internal footway, but only when they were open. But these instances of conflict are deemed to be quite minor and low and doesn't generate an overriding public safety issue. Not by the Highway Authority, but separate concerns have been raised by a letter of objection regarding the quarry access by construction of vehicles. But in response, the route was approved within the construction management plan for the development, and the access is considered appropriate, as it was when it was a working quarry and a landfill site. So the report concludes that there are no significant highway implications. With regards to ecology and trees, the original outline application was accompanied by an environmental statement, and the site is also part of a SINC. An environmental management plan was approved under condition 9 of the outline, which provides a site-wide strategy for ecological mitigation, compensation, and enhancement. And this application has been accompanied with some updated ecological information. And whilst the site has been cleared, because you can see it being used as a bit of a site compound, there's no significant ecological implications with this, especially with the conditions imposed on the outline, and the council's ecologists have not objected subject to further conditions. There are no significant trees within the quarry basin either, so the tree officer has not objected. Condition 8 of the outline permission provides a site-wide drainage strategy, and those details have been previously agreed with the council's drainage section, and the condition allows for phased operations of drainage within the site, and the council's drainage officer and Welsh Water had offered no objection to the proposed drainage scheme. Welsh Water, however, have indicated that there may be a water supply issue in the immediate vicinity, and it could cause detriment to existing customers' water supply. And whilst the comments are noted, conditions relating to this matter was not included in the outline planning permission, which is the principle of the development, as it was granted on appeal, and it would be unreasonable and outside the scope of this application to try and address these requirements. In terms of land contamination, the outline includes conditions in respect of the requirements to address environmental and human health matters associated with the former landfill operations at the quarry. Some of the requirements of the conditions have already been addressed. However, further information will be required for this phase. NRW have not objected to the proposal, but have raised a couple of concerns on that further information is required relating to landfill gas and landfill cap issues. So I'll just cover those in a little bit now. They've stated that elevated levels of methane gas from the landfill has been detected. An environmental permit holder for the site is currently investigating ways of controlling this. NRW have highlighted that protection measures for the dwelling would be required, and their comments are noted, but it's not considered necessary to impose further conditions because the condition on the outline deals with gas protection measures there, and they're already covered by that condition. In relation to the landfill cap, which sits on top of the waste mass because it was a landfill site, that cap is needed to stabilise and protect the waste below. NRW have requested further information to demonstrate that the landscaping on top, as part of phase 5, doesn't penetrate the cap. So we have recommended a condition to deal with that, to make sure then that there isn't leakage from like water then trickling down into the cap situation. So the council's pollution control have offered no objection to the application. Network Rail have stated a holding objection because they consider that the existing agreement for the railway bridge is not fit for purpose. Whilst this may or may not be the case, the matters raised by Network Rail are beyond the scope of this reserve matters application. They'd offer no comments at the outline stage, and there was no condition on the permission to restrict vehicle access on the bridge. So it should be noted that phase 5 doesn't actually require the use of the bridge because that is done via phase 3. So notwithstanding the technical comments from the consultees, we've had one letter of objection, and I've referred to earlier. This related to traffic, parking and access, which is addressed in the report, and I did touch to it in the presentation. So to conclude, the reserve matters is for 19 dwellings, which is the final phase of this overall development, for around 300 houses. And it's deemed to be acceptable and meet the requirements of the outline permission and the various policies, guidelines and material considerations. So the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lewis, did you wish to address the committee as a local member?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please. I think some of the members of the committee will remember back in 2017 that we overturned the decision to develop at all on this site, and I'm grateful for the committee's support at that time. And the reasons stated then are very similar to the reasons stated today, that when it was an active landfill site, and I've sat on the Quarry Liaison Committee, and heard the concerns from NRW in terms of leachate at that time, which was leaching into the local water supply, that we didn't really know and we weren't confident what had been filled into the landfill site. So we don't know what materials have been dumped. And I'm not surprised to see in the report on page 38, NRW's comments around elevated methane levels. Nobody, I think, in the community would disagree with capping off and the cessation of the landfill site. I think that's absolutely what needs to happen. But I am concerned about NRW's comments regarding an active gas management system needing to be in place. And I think having some confidence about the certainty of how that gas management is going to occur going forward for the security of those 19 residences close to that site would be welcomed. Because I think that's one of my serious concerns, is the disruption and disturbance from construction sites of this nature so close to a landfill site where we don't really know what was dumped there in the beginning. And if perhaps some certainty and some confidence can be given to how that methane extraction and the dealing of that methane will be dealt with, that would give confidence to local residents and to the local members. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that contribution. I got, there's a mic on there. Got Councillor Keaton first, wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think Councillor Lewis has covered all of it. When I heard methane and they were concerned, and I'm just thinking it might be those 19 houses might be the step too far, and maybe something else should be done with that area because it doesn't sound that safe to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Black?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, when I was in the Senate member, I had some briefings from NRW on this, and frankly, I wouldn't live in one of these houses on top of what's in that. You have no idea what's underneath them. Just a thought about the methane. I mean, can't we use it to generate electricity? I mean, wouldn't that be a better way of doing it? You know, rather than just burning it off. You know, it's certainly far more environmentally safe to do that than it would be just to burn it off, and which in itself creates problems with atmospheric gas and stuff. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lewis?
I must point out to the head of the planning department that this was a proper quarry.
Yeah.
And indeed, the residents, when I can remember it, probably as I'm the longest serving member here, that I had lots of complaints from people living in Morriston that when they were blasting, tons of rock went up in the air and often came through people's windows. So there was I think most people living around the area would be glad to see this development here and think how lucky we are today, what happened years ago. But as I say, that is a proper quarry, not just a scraping a few rocks here and there. This is how it should be done properly.
Yeah.
Councillor
Mary Jones?
Yeah, if I can have a bit more information about this Network Rail, it says it doesn't believe the bridge is fit for purpose. And I was one of the members that went on the site visit there many years ago. The first comment we got when we got out of the bus was, look at this bridge. And I think the planning officer said, well, it doesn't affect the actual site, because if I recall, they had to knock a house down to get access to the top end of this site. Now, these houses and flats that we're talking about are right in the basin. They're in the dampest, coldest bit that you can imagine. And on top of that, with all this talk about the methane gas as well, I agree with Councillor Black. I certainly wouldn't want to live in one of those houses. I don't think that we should actually be building there. I know it had outline permission, which we did not give. But when you look at it, and we did look at it in great detail, we didn't want the house at all, but the bits in the bowl, I'm sorry, I don't think you should. I think there's going to be problems from drainage, from the gas and cold, damp, the houses. So I'm not very happy with this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor White?
Yes, in relation again to the issue with the leakage and that, is it possibly that we could have a condition that how often this is actually monitored and we are informed how often this leakage is actually monitored, so that we can at least, you know, have an indication how things are, if they're improving or not improving. Thank you, Chair.
Here we go. Councillor Keaton, did you want to come back in?
Yes, Chair. Yes, my concern at the bottom there will be the drainage as well as methane. Also, it's no good monitoring stuff when people are already then living there. What are you going to do? They're a bit stuck then, aren't they? So I'd rather us decide whether to build there now rather than that. Thank you.
Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to know, was the original application subject to a 106 agreement? And if we were to refuse this application today, would that stop any trigger points of them paying the 106? Because obviously that the whole estate that we built, that was being built there, was all included, and those trigger points would have been built into the original agreement. Thank you.
Councillor Alan Jeffrey.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Yes, if I can come through, just following on from Councillor Mary Jones and Keaton, and from my thinking in terms of a quarry being a hole in the ground, I couldn't quite see the geography in terms of the slides that we had. Would these houses be built at the bottom or in the lower area? I mean, surely that there must be a flooding issue that needs to be addressed here, and therefore the effective draining. I wonder, has that been? I'm sure it's been looked at, but it didn't come quite clear through the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Cheers. Now, a few points there to come back on. If we've got any
yes, indeed. I'll try and go through them then. Okay. The outline planning permission, irrespective of what the decision, we've got to look at the facts. It was allowed on appeal. Okay, so I appreciate whatever the efforts of the committee was done. The decision was made on appeal, and that we've got to attach quite a bit of weight to that. Yes, it was subject to 106, and you have asked some questions there that I'm not entirely sure the answers to, but I'll come to that in a minute. Okay. Right, turning to the outline, it did have the outline covered up to 300 dwellings, and it was informed by a master plan and a phasing showing this, right? So the fact that you may not be particularly happy with some of the issues, it may not be particularly wise to look at the principle of the issues about where the houses are, because that was informed at the outline stage. In terms of, and as I mentioned, this is a reserve matters just to agree the details, so we can't revisit the principal issues. We've got to accept that the principle was residential is allowed. And I appreciate whether or not the committee likes it or not. I understand that, but it was allowed on appeal. In terms of the principal issues, things like the drainage strategy and all that was determined at the outline stage, in which the inspector and the inspectorate considered it that the development could proceed and that there would be effective drainage and matters to deal with the landfill legacy and the quarry legacy on it. The conditions, so if I just focus on some of the issues, now then, as officers, we try to follow the evidence, so to speak, and I appreciate some of the concerns that's been expressed there, and you've maybe been involved quite a long time in this, but we've got to follow the evidence that's before you and some of the technical response that we've had. NRW generally look at groundwater contamination type of thing, and our pollution control team tend to look at human health issues. Now then, pollution control have not objected, so it would be unwise to pursue a matter perhaps on human health issues. In terms of groundwater protection, NRW have not objected to it. They have raised concerns, admittedly. The report is quite honest. I think it hasn't kind of said anything about it, but the outline planning permission has a condition on it which controls with various matters, and I will just pick up on page 45, where we look at land contamination. Condition 7 of the outline planning permission requires the developer to submit a scheme to investigate and monitor the site for the presence of gas and provide protection measures where necessary for phase 5. That condition is already there. So the point that's being made here in the report is there's no need to provide any additional controls because the control is already there by the planning permission. The only condition that we are imposing, because it wasn't foreseen at the principal stage, is to deal with the landscaping, because landscaping is something that's before you to consider now. If you put trees and planting on top of the landfill cap, we want to ensure that the integrity of the cap isn't penetrated by, for example, the roots of new trees going on top. So we've added a condition to make sure that any new planting doesn't penetrate the cap, which would then result in drainage leaking down into the landfill, causing further pollution. So when you look at the outline together with what's on here, and you look at the evidence of NRW's comments, who have not objected but raised concerns, when you look at pollution control, who have not objected, officers come to the conclusion that there is no clear evidence of harm that can be identified at this stage. So you as members, you're entitled to make your decision, but we as officers try to follow the evidence, and we find no clear and obvious technical reasons, despite some of the reservations. I can hear the reservations, and it's always the risk of unknown, what's underground there, whatever it is. But we have to follow the evidence before us, and I guess I just wanted to point that out to yourselves. In terms of drainage, again, we follow the technical perspective. The report is quite honest. Our drainage team have been involved into this right from the start. They had no issues with the drainage strategy to begin with at the outline. They've submitted a drainage strategy to inform this phase, which they've looked at it and they considered that the drainage mechanism works and is acceptable. The report has pointed not so much drainage, but the water supply issues. But I've tried to explain why we can't kind of deal with that, because that is essentially a principal issue that should have been thrashed out at the outline stage, where the inspector perhaps should have taken that matter forward, but didn't. Right, I'm just trying to think, is there anything else? Ian, do you want to? In
terms of the Section 106 agreement, there were contributions towards education, and that was split over 2 payments, a third at the 120th dwelling being occupied, 2/3 at the 150th dwelling being occupied, total 750,000. They've both been paid, and I know education have asked for the money to be released towards works at Cymru de Cairo School. The second contribution was for towards travel plan. That was prior to the first occupation. So again, that's passed and been paid. And then there were other obligations in terms of improvements on Mysagunan Road and outside the primary school. And I know that work has been done to provide labour and drop-off facilities.
Could you bring the site plan, perhaps the phasing plan, just so we can have a look at this bridge issue? Yeah. The response in the report in relation to the bridge is on the bottom of page 46, where it discusses about the objection from Network Rail. Now then, as I mentioned, we can't revisit the principle of the development. So the use of this bridge, when outline planning permission was granted to redevelop the quarry for around 300 dwellings, there was no comments made by Network Rail in relation to this bridge, and there were no conditions imposed which says that you can't use this bridge or whatever it is. Now then, again, that is the permission, so we can't really do anything in relation to this permission now because it's a principal issue. Phase 5 is the purplish bit within the island of yellow white area that you've got there, and you can see a little spur going on the right hand side of it that then connects to phase 3. That's essentially all we're looking at, is that spur and then the phase 5. Anything beyond that is already part of either a development that's been granted before or excluded. So if I understand, the bridge is located in like the bottom right hand corner of phase 3. Yeah, there you are. Again, there was no restrictions on it. That bridge was the access point, I believe, when the quarry was operational. So if it can accommodate heavy goods vehicles, then obviously you're not going to have heavy goods. Once this site is occupied, it's going to be used by cars and vans type of thing for future. So when you look at all the evidence, Network Rail's objection would have been probably more useful at the outline stage, not so much at this stage, and it would be unreasonable for us to start trying to control it via this permission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a minute, I got Jonathan wants to come in first. All right.
Thank you, Chair. Just got one comment really about the water quality and that issue where Welsh Water supply issue. So although this issue can't be addressed now through the planning system because outline consent has been given, as has been said, Welsh Water, they do have their own powers and their own regulations, so they could use those powers to improve the water quality or supply. So that would be separate legislation, but there is the ability for them to do that separately. Thank you.
So much. Was Peter first, and then I think yeah, Peter Black first. Thank you.
I pressed it. It did press it. Just want to refer to page 45 on the land contamination, which the officer just drew our attention to. At the end of the first paragraph, it says the requirements of condition 18 have been met. However, further information will be required to address the requirements of condition 7 insofar as they relate to phase 5. From what I can see, there's no condition relating to that particular paragraph, that particular sentiment attached to this planning commission. So I think if we are looking for further information and further reassurance in relation to condition 7, then maybe that should be a condition on the application that they should satisfy us before starting building on this site.
Councillor Jones.
Oh, thank you. That bridge then, is that the only access out from phase 5? Because I obviously I can't see very well because the one behind me isn't working. And also, I mean, I don't know why Network Rail didn't comment at the outline stage. Maybe they thought just because it was outline stage, I don't know. But they have actually commented now and agree, the agreement's not fit for purpose. And to be honest, when we saw the bridge, I mean, you weren't obviously with us at that time. We didn't think it was fit for purpose. We were rather, we didn't go over it with the minibus. We had minibuses in those days. And we just, walked over it. And I'm very concerned that they've made the comment now, even though it's too late in perhaps your terms, in our terms, it may not be. And I am deeply concerned about the bridge and obviously with the other things that have been mentioned.
Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, just an observation that the site of this fifth development at the moment is a holding site and a construction area. That is fed across the bridge. So all the construction traffic for building that estate has been going across that bridge for the last 5 years, 6 years. So I can't see that, and heavy construction when they're building a development like this. So personally, I obviously think the bridge is fine. Sorry, Mary.
Okay, the bridge isn't the main point of access to the site. In fact, the main point of access is to the north. So if you came, that's good. So if you came off the spur from phase 5, you would then go through phase 3 and travel north. So you're almost climbing the side of the quarry until you go up at the top then, which is the main access point into the estate. And then that allows you access towards the M4, so to speak. So that is the main point of traffic that most of the residents do. Again, the bridge, a lot of it, I'm afraid, is a historical situation. And I do note your concerns, and it's just unfortunately, I would steer you away from trying to control that via this permission. Condition 7, you mentioned. And then Welsh Government do advise that we shouldn't be duplicating controls. The ultimate control is via the planning permission, and the planning permission is essentially the outline plan permission, where this is just basically bolt on the details to inform the outline under this. I see no reason why we could add it as like an informative to remind the applicant developer of their obligations to comply with the requirements of condition 7 on the outline, which they have to do anyway, because they are bound to it. but I wouldn't recommend duplicating the condition 7 on this permission, because I think Welsh Government advises us not to duplicate existing controls.
The reason, Chair, why I suggested duplicating is because this is specifically phase 5 is in the quarry floor and has particular issues in relation to potential leakage and also methane gas, and has to be controlled. But I think an informative one would be helpful. So, you know, they do need to have their attention drawn to this and our concerns about this. Yeah.
Sure. Yes, no problem with that.
You, well, I got no other hands up. Oh,
Just picking up on the informative point, in terms of the bridge, there's also an informative for the applicant to contact Network Rail regarding that bridge. So again, we're drawing it to their attention.
okay, thank you. Just just to remind us to remember, members, what we've been asked to look at is, as it says, details of the appearance, landscaping, layout and scale pursuant to outline planning permission already granted. Okay, so on that basis, then we can move to a vote. Thank you, Gareth.
Yeah, so vote with the extra informative as suggested, yeah. So councillor Peter Black.
For.
Bill Downing.
For.
Alan Jeffrey.
For.
Mary Jones.
For.
Sarah Keaton.
For.
Mike Lewis.
For.
Richard Lewis.
For.
Mark Tribe. Councillor Tribe.
He looks frozen to me.
Frozen, yeah. Councillor Mike White.
For.
Andrew Williams.
For.
Paul Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Tribe. No, he seems to have frozen there. So that's 10 for, Chair. That's unanimous, in fact.
Thank you very much. That's carried. And definitely. Oh, he's frozen. Yeah. Moving on then to item 3, and you find on page 52, we're going to Pontarddulais. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the application reported to committee for decision because it's a technical departure from the LDP, particularly policy RC9, due to no marketing or advertising being carried out to secure the sale and lease of the premises for retail use. So the application is seeking consent to change the use of the premises within Pontarddulais District Centre from an A1 use, which is a shop, to an A3, a hot food kind of takeaway establishment. The slide shows the general location of the premises being on the northwestern end of St Taylor Street, which is the main commercial road of the town. Next slide, please. This is the counterpart aerial image showing the site in a built-up area of the town. And next slide, please. So this is the site location plan with the site outlined in red. It is a relatively small site containing a detached and mostly single-storey structure with some limited space in the loft. Next slide, please. So the slide shows the elevations and floor plans of the building. No external alterations are proposed. Whilst only existing floor plans have been provided, it's not deemed essential to have proposed plans to consider this application. The existing plans are sufficient to determine the size, impact and implications arising from this change of use application. And just to give you a guide, the floor space is around 57 square meters. Next slide, please. So this is the front elevation of the premises. The unit was once occupied as travel house before it became a sandwich delicatessen. It was known as the Garden Deli. The premises was recently sold and a site visit has confirmed that it is now being used as Motley Pies and Coffee. As mentioned, there are no physical changes to the exterior of the building, with any signage and adverts dealt by other regulations and not part of this change of use of application. The A3 house would operate during daytime hours, with the application form specifying Monday to Saturday of 7 AM till 4 PM and Sunday and bank holidays to 9 AM till 2 PM. Next slide, please. So here's the side elevation, which is mostly visible from the street scene. Next slide, please. And here's just a couple of photographs showing the general street scene along this part of St Taylor Street, emphasising the mixed commercial nature of the area. Next slide, please. So the reason for this application before Planning Committee is largely a technical issue. The site is within the primary retail frontage of Pontarddulais District Centre, where planning policy is largely aimed at safeguarding retailing and A1 uses in this location. So the proposal seeking to change the use from A1 to an A3, which would result in a loss of a retail unit. So in such instances, applications would need to satisfy the relevant criteria of the policy in the LDP. And one of the right criteria relates to the likelihood of the unit being vacant for a significant period of time and to be informed by evidence of appropriate marketing undertaken over a minimum of 12 months to establish a retail occupier. But in this particular case, the premises was sold very quickly and no evidence of marketing of the premises for retail use has been submitted. So as such, the proposal is deemed to be a technical departure to an aspect of one of the policies in the LDP. So the report before you today have carefully examined the various material considerations with this scheme, demonstrating that it does on balance comply with many of the aims and objectives of the LDP and the broader policies associated with commercial uses. So in this regard, whilst it is acknowledged that the proposal does not accord with an aspect of policy RC9 of the LDP, it's on balance, the change of use would promote economic activity and contribute to the diversity of uses within the centre, generating footfall throughout the daytime and retaining some interest and vibrancy. So it must be emphasised that unlike a traditional A3 unit, which usually opens during like late evenings and at night, this is a daytime use, operates during typical shopping hours, and the nature of the use of the premises is akin of a type of retail outlet or a daytime cafe, and generates similar kind of footfall and patterns that you would expect. So the premises is also relatively small, as I mentioned, about 57 square metres, and it would retain a bit of an active frontage. The minimum percentage of A1 shops within this primary shopping centre area in this particular section would be over 50%, which is compliant with the guidance set in the SPG. So despite the loss of the A1 unit, it is considered in this instant and on balance that it would not have an adverse impact on the vitality and viability or the attractiveness of the centre, which are generally regarded as some of the key aspects of planning policy for safeguarding retailing commercial centres. So a condition has been recommended to ensure that the premises remains a daytime use. So it retains a complementary function to the retail aspect of the area and the vitality of the area. With regards to other matters, the premises is within a flood risk area, but the existing and the proposed use involves less vulnerable development, and Natural Resources Wales, who are the technical advisors for us for flooding, have not objected to the scheme. So there are no significant policy issues on flooding. The site is in a commercial area and there are limited number of residents nearby. However, subject to a condition limiting it to a daytime operation and condition to deal with any fumes or odours relating from cooking, it's not really deemed to be detrimental to residential amenity. The site is in a commercial area, but it is also in a sustainable area. It involves a small premises, which is already in commercial use. The Highway Authority have not objected to the scheme, and whilst they've made some comments about the refuge storage, we've now understood that they do have some small space behind the premises to store their bins, and this is considered acceptable, especially for an unit that's already a commercial use that previously was a deli, and it's quite a small use as well. There have been no adverse comments received during the public consultation. So having looked at all the planning policies and the technical issues and the guidance and the material considerations, on balance, we deem it to be acceptable. So the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Local members here, so go over to you first.
Can I thank the officer for a very full report on a small shop? Yeah, this has been open for approximately 2 months now, and it has added to the footfall in the town. It's very popular, expensive. But I got to point out that all the photos you took there, that wasn't my car outside every time. Yeah, and as of this morning, there were 14% of the shops in the town empty. that's around 12 shops. So any addition to the street, which will bring people in, and they are nice pies. They're in Gowerton as well, so I thought I better add that. Yeah, so I've got no objection to the recommendation and will agree with it.
Councillor Black.
Just as a small point, on page 68 on condition 3, the second line of the reason, do we mean complementary as opposed to complementary? But this is quite important. This is actually a legal document.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're correct.
Okay, thank you. I got no other speakers? No? Yeah, okay. Okay, look, no other member wish to speak? No, I can see no hands up. You can see the recommendation there is to approve. And so Gareth, when you're ready, please.
Yeah, Peter Black.
4.
Phil Downing.
4.
Alan Jeffrey.
4.
Mary Jones.
4.
Sarah Keaton. Councillor Keaton.
No? Good stuff.
Sorry,
Okay.
having problems. 4.
Okay.
Thank you. Mike Lewis.
4.
Richard Lewis. Mark Tribe. No, he's gone. Mike White. 4. Andrew Williams.
4.
And Paul Lloyd.
And 4.
That's 10-4, Chair, unanimous.
Very well, that's carried. Thank you very much. And then our final item is Intergo signing now for on page 70. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, the application is referred to committee because the original development met the committee's threshold. So in September 2021, full planning consent was granted by the committee for 44 affordable dwellings, landscaping, access and works at land at Pencaernarfon Farm and Pencaernarfon Road in Gosainon. This slide shows the location of the site. Next slide, please. This is the counterpart aerial image showing the site being located on the northern end of the urban area. Next slide, please. So this is the red line boundary to show the extent of the application site. It comprises an irregular shaped parcel of greenfield land, about 1.7 hectares, located outside and adjoining the LDP's settlement boundary, north of Penrheol, slight slopes east to west, and is bordered by agricultural land to the north, a covered Welsh water reservoir, and a working farm to the west, and some residential dwellings to the east. Southern boundary fronts onto Pencaernarfon Road. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the overall layout of the site, primarily consisting of detached and semi-detached properties. There is a single block of flats in the northeastern corner, adjacent to an area of open space, and the site is under construction. Next slide, please. So this application is seeking to vary the approved permission, but only to allow the addition of solar panels for the roofs of all properties and the blocks of flats, and to include an air source heat pump units for all the units. In all other respects, the development will remain as approved. Therefore, the scope, nature and scale of this application is quite narrow. Next slide, please. So here are the elevation of the block of flats showing the arrangement of the solar panels and the inclusion of the air source heat pumps, which are just quite small units. They are shown in orange on the site plan, which is in the centre of that, but I appreciate some of you may not be able to see it. But they are quite small units located around the outskirts of the building. A couple will be located on the wall in an elevated position of it, and as you can see there, you can see one just above the next to the window there on that elevation. Okay, next slide, please. So here is a collection of some of the approved house types with the solar panels added to the roof, and then the air source heat pumps shown on the ground alongside the exterior of the dwellings. Next slide, please. So turning to the photographs, the site is under construction. Some of the dwellings already built up to roof level, and even include some of the solar panels. So this view was taken from Hale Elfed, which is a residential estate on the opposite side of Pencernarder Road, and is looking towards the dwellings at the front of the site. Next slide, please. This is taken from the entrance to the site of Pencernarder Road, and just showing a few more dwellings under construction, and some have actually got the solar panels on them. Next slide, please. And again, a different view from Hale Pencernarder Road, looking up towards the corner of the site, which is on the right-hand side of the road. Next slide, please. This is taken from a relatively central point within the site, which is under construction, and some of the house types you can see. The block of flats does not yet appear to be under construction. Next slide. And this final photograph shows a couple of the dwellings under construction behind the covered reservoir. That's to the left-hand side of that photograph. Next slide, please. Okay, so the principle of the residential development is not the key issue here, and it's been well established by a permission that's in the process of being implemented. The main issues is mainly about the amendments. So we're looking at the inclusion of the solar panels and the air source heat pumps, and they mainly relate to visual and residential amenity, having considered the LDP policies. So the report has assessed these matters and conclude that the panels are considered appropriate, laid out quite well within a modern residential estate, and they would not appear particularly incongruous or out of place. Similarly, the air source heat pumps would not also be prominent or visually intrusive. And whilst they may be visible, certainly a couple of them from the elevated position, they will not be unduly harmful, particularly being mounted on a backdrop of rendered buildings. So there are no significant visual concerns. In terms of residential amenity, the solar panels are on the roof, don't cause particular huge issues in that respect. The air source heat pumps, although they generate an element of noise, they are not deemed to be overly noisy in this particular instance or generate unreasonable amenity factors. The proposed development doesn't affect things like parking or highway layouts and doesn't raise any significant ecology or biodiversity issues either. Because it's a Section 73 application, it effectively would grant a new planning permission. So it's necessary to include any conditions on the original permission and bring them forward to this application. Some of the conditions have already been discharged and they will have to be amended and reworded, but they are going to be carried forward into this scheme. Likewise, the original scheme had a legal agreement to deal with contributions toward affordable housing, highways, education, open space, and a new legal agreement will be required to ensure that their obligations are maintained. There have been no adverse comments received during the public consultation. So in conclusion, the proposal primarily relates to the inclusion of solar panels and air source heat pumps to all the residential units. And the recommendation is to approve subject to conditions and a new legal agreement, with delegated authority to refuse the application if the agreement is not signed within 3 months. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much once again. I got Mr. Scarborough is the applicant's agent. There you are.
Yes, yeah.
Just now, when you're ready, you got your 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today. My name is James Scarborough, agent on behalf of the applicant for the scheme. As you are all aware, this application has been recommended for approval, and as such, I'll keep my speech relatively brief. Without repeating the content of the report before you, officers have closely and carefully assessed the planning application and have found that it is acceptable in all respects. The applicant proposes to install the air source heat pumps and PV cells to proposed dwellings and flat block in order to improve the sustainability credentials of the 100% affordable housing social venue tenure development for achieving the desired EPC ratings. Accordingly, the proposed additions are considered imperative to meet the sustainability requirements of a 100% affordable housing scheme in Wales in the context of delivering a Welsh Development Quality Requirement, or better known as WDQR compliant standard. As set out by the officer, the introduction of the PV cells and air source heat pumps to residential developments are becoming more and more frequent across Wales, particularly for affordable housing schemes in order to promote renewable energy. As such, they are not considered to be incongruous additions to the dwellings and in turn are accepted as common features on modern residential developments. The proposed siting and scale of the PV cells have been carefully designed in order to ensure that the character and appearance of the dwellings are not visually detracted in any event. Likewise, in respect of the air source heat pumps, they are to be sited towards the rear of properties and therefore will not be prominent or have any material impact to the street scene of the development. In the case of the pumps to be located around sill level on the block of flats, again, these are to be carefully positioned where they face a parking courtyard and a proposed landscaped embankment, which will offer appropriate screening. Accordingly, neither of the two proposed features will have an acceptable impact on the character and appearance of the wider development. In terms of residential amenity, the pumps will be located on the ground floor away from neighbouring properties and to the rear of the dwellings. In respect of the pumps to be located at sill level on the block of flats, these will be sited adjacent to kitchen windows and therefore will not result in undue noise to occupants. The technical data submitted in support of the planning application confirms that the decibel levels will not exceed that of normal conversation noise levels. Accordingly, the introduction of the pumps will not bring about any unacceptable impacts upon future residents. With regards to progress made on site, as confirmed by officers, the applicant has commenced development of the proposed scheme with all pre-commencement conditions either discharged or submitted with the authority. It is envisaged that the development will be completed by August 2024, with all dwellings occupied by the end of September this year. Accordingly, the proposed scheme will be able to deliver much needed affordable housing in this location in the short term. It is noticed that, given the nature of the application, a new legal agreement is required via deed of variation, and the applicant is willing to secure a new agreement to confirm their ongoing compliance with the Section 106 contributions. This process will commence as soon as possible with the Council. To conclude, and consistent with your officer's comprehensive and detailed assessment and conclusions, the development is considered to be wholly policy compliant. Moreover, the proposed new features will not result in any unacceptable visual impacts, nor will they have any effect on residential amenity. I therefore respectfully urge you to approve the development accordingly, in line with the recommendation of officers. Thank you very much for your time.
Indeed, thank you very much. Thanks for that. And Councillor Lewis, do you have your hand up?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, while I'm generally supportive of this type of change of use to an existing past planning application, I must say I was on the site visit for this site when I believe Mary was as well, and what we observed at the time was quite a flow of traffic down that hill, quite a fast flow of traffic down that Pencavarda road, and it was suggested at the time that a proposal to put a control crossing on that road. As the officers mentioned, the condition 73, I just wanted to know, because that was a highways issue in that, I just wanted to know that was that carried through to the actual granting of the application, because I still feel that there's going to be a lot of children trying to cross that road, and I feel it should be mentioned. So if there is any change in the overall consent, then we should look at it now. Thank you, Chair.
Member, I'm agreeing to it. Yeah, we'll find out now. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yes, I agree. We did stand there, and it is very near the primary school. So there were, I think it was lunchtime, so the nursery children were coming out. Well, you were there yourself, Chair. So you saw it. No, it's a question about these proper title now. The heat pumps, anyway. Air source heat pumps. You've said about the noise, and they've said about the visual thing, but nobody said, is there any sort of emission like heat or anything that comes from them? I don't know absolutely nothing about them. So I want to know, especially the ones that are flat around the flats, the ones by people's back doors. I'm assuming it's within their curtilage and nobody else walks past them. But I just wondered, do they emit any heat, and especially for the ones that would be on the blocks of flats? But I also agree with Councillor Mike Lewis about the crossing.
Thank you. Good with the hands up.
Okay. Thank you. With regards to the highway matters, page 74, it recaps the planning obligations of the original development. And it lists them about what were the contributions toward like affordable housing, and little item 2, there's a highway contribution, and it itemized some of the factors there. So this development, if you were to approve it, would remain tied to that obligation. If that's what you were looking for, I hope I've pointed to you to the right point. But yeah, we see no reason to deviate from what's there. With regards to the air source heat pumps, I have to say it is a fairly new modern technology, and I haven't got a huge amount of knowledge myself on it. But my understanding of it, it pulls in the ambient air from the outside to help with the heating inside, or either water or others. I'm not aware that they emit heat in terms of out to the atmosphere that much, so to speak. It's more to do with improving the heat inside your home rather than, yeah. The honest answer, I'm not completely fair, but I'm not aware that but this seems to be the latest technology being introduced for domestic properties now. And you'll probably be seeing more and more of these for new houses or retrofitted to existing housing stock. I'm sorry, I can't be hugely helpful there for you. Sorry, go on.
Just to expand on Eileen's point, my understanding is they transfer heat rather than generate it. So they take it from one place to another rather than produce the heat itself.
Right, nice. Learn something every day. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Can I just add to that? They act in reverse as well. So during the summer, they cool a house, but then the excess heat is transmitted outside, as Mary was concerned about that. That's the.
Thank you. Okay, I got no other hands up wishing to speak. So you can see the recommendation there is to approve. So we take that vote now, then, please.
Yeah, Peter Black. 4. Bill Downing. 4. Alan Jeffrey.
4.
Mary Jones.
4.
Sarah Keaton.
4.
Mike Lewis.
4.
Mark 5.
No.
No, gone. Mike White. 4. Andrew Williams.
4.
Paul Lloyd.
Yeah, 4.
That's 9-4, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's carried. And that concludes the business of the meeting today. And we will meet again on the 5th of March. Thank you. Till we meet again.
Thank you, Chair. From
Bye.
Sunny